comment? Debbie? So we'll move on to the highlights of the night, the concussion procedure update, and non-athletic director, Lou Wenzel. Welcome.
Hi everyone, nice to see you again. Thanks for having me. So I just want to go over our new concussion management policy, but I want to still first address that we always had one, and it's always been working. It's a great policy, but we had to update this one. So we have two different forms, as you'll see as we go on. So the reason why we have it is because the New York State Education Department, they recently revised their guidelines for the management of schools, concussion guidelines. So just in July 22nd, so there's probably all the schools will be revised up differently. Concussion is a type of traumatic brain injury that is reacting to brain, part of brain is forced to the head and the impact of blow occurring anywhere on the body. Essentially, the concussion is local to the brain moving back and forth for a 15-rapid impact. This doesn't, a lot of people know about that stuff. So some of the symptoms of concussion are temporary, change of brain function causing short-term impairment of the brain function. Signs, symptoms, and recovery of concussion are very on students and in between the cases. So that's why it's so imperative that any student who's suspected of having sustained a concussion immediately be removed from object outside of the other physical activity. Until further evaluated and cleared by an active medical specialist. So now the new form is pretty much going into we separate the two out. We have a concussion management team. So as a director of the concussion management team, we feel people for athletics, which consists of the athletic director, school council director, certified athletic trainer, health office, and coaches. We also have an academic concussion management team, which consists of health office nurses, guidance counselors, principals, and their teachers. So it's just a little slightly different with it. Yes.
The academic, is that if it happens like during gym class or something?
No, academics is so when they get a concussion, for their teachers. So like they can't do performance, they can't do bright lights. So it's just a modification, but in the classroom. So these new policies cover everything. Academics, not just athletics. So that's why we upgraded this a little bit more. So what do I do? If I'm on a staff member, maybe a recess monitor outside that sees a concussion, right? So the first thing you want to do is, regardless of the injury, you want to explain athletics or non-athletic event, remove the student from activity. And we use this concussion checklist evaluation form. So this form is designed to, we're going to show it real quick, but this form is now simplified. It has it's something that anyone can have on them. And then it tells you all the symptoms that you can observe. So you get the student's name, you get the observation. So these are some of the symptoms that you can tell of a concussion. So if you know what a concussion is, these are the questions that you ask the student or that's doing it. So then we notify the parents. We have a little evaluation at the end. This could be done by anyone that sees it, and it could be given to the health office. So and coaches, we don't have everyone right there. So as a coach, we would give this to if they had to go to the hospital or the parents going to the hospital with their child, they would give this to them. So that gives the doctor a little bit more understanding of what's going on. These are the symptoms. So here we go. So that's just the form. That's in every packet that we have. Once you get that form, you let everyone know, right? So you want to let all the stakeholders know the injury. The health office, patients that are the parents, you get to call 911. Everyone that you think that needs to know, you want to do that. I tell my coaches, and the coaches always do this, they follow with the parents and guardians to check on the student's condition. Because not all the symptoms come right away, but they can come at night, and we want the parents to understand that it's a serious injury that you should monitor your own child. So after step 3, we immediately remove the student from cognitive, athletic, and physical activities, which is PE, recess. We remove them until they're evaluating cleared from a healthcare provider. If you're not sure if a concussion happened, err on the side of caution, when in doubt, sit them out. So that's what we use as for that should be used for everyone. If you don't know, if you think it could be a concussion, be safe. Rather safe than sorry. And then the 4 would be provide the appropriate Hastings concussion protocol and informational packet to the parent. So we have 2 of them. So we have one for athletics and one for non-athletics. These all can be found on the board doc, so if you want to look at them, to save time, we won't go into all of them. But we have 2 separate forms. Now, we do have 2 separate forms. Why do we have 2 separate forms? You know, we had to redo them to reflect the most up-to-date concussion policies by the state ed. But we also, we already have one, but athletics is a little bit more in depth, right? So concussions are extremely, everyone hears of concussions in athletics, right? 3.8 million concussions a year, but it can happen anywhere. It could happen now with a trip, or a fall, get a concussion. We all gotta be on the same page to help prevent, to help the concussed person. So that being said, the Hastings community is committed and prepared to help all of us experience deal with concussions. Well, it happens on the athletic field, in the hallways, or recess outside of school. So we're a big team. So everyone needs to be on the same page to help a child, regardless of if it's athletics. So what are the 2 differences? So instead of going into them, I'll go over some of the slight differences. One, obviously the cover sheet. So we have 2 different cover sheets to differentiate them. But Form B is what we give to the doctor. So that's their evaluation piece. Now, for non-athletics, which the physician can just clear. They're in charge of it, they take it, they say, all right, you're cleared to go back to school, and that's it. But now, for an athlete, you need to the physician allows us to do the return to play process, which is a little bit more. It's a 5-day process, and we build up to physical activity for them. For every athlete goes through this. And until now, we don't have to do that for non-athletes, but students that are not participating in athletics at the time. And then we get cleared from the medical director, and then they come to the people who do the return to play, which is either coaches or a certified PE teacher or an athletic trainer. And then once we get that all done, we give it back to the school the health office, which gets clearance from the medical director. So it's more steps to get cleared to play. So we have that return to play policy. That's the form that we use. That's in the packet. That's basically the form that we use. It goes day 1, and it tells you to build it up, and it has all the rules of how to do it. We've been using this for a long time now. So based on research, some of the other reasons why we changed is based on research for improving brain healing, the required rest period is shortened. It used to be 72 hours, but now it's 24 to 48, so it helps the brain to do slight activity. So now that's into our new policy and our new procedure. So we revised it to meet what's best for the medical field. And the 4th thing that we added in is informational student and parent packets. The goal is to help educate and help deal with the concussion throughout the entire process. That's physically and emotionally. So there's some packets in there that go into the social emotional learning about how to deal and cope with a concussion. Because if you're an athlete, you get a concussion, if anyone gets a concussion, you're off, you're not feeling great. So this is mental health issues that we could help them out with that. So that's all added into the packet that we have. Like I said, Hastings on Hudson is committed to concussion management. We believe that taking care of our students is a team effort, whether it's involved in athletics or not. Every coach is required, so currently what we do is every coach is required to be certified first aid, CPR, and AED, but they're also required to take a concussion course every 2 years. So our coaches, every coach that you have is well versed in how to handle a concussion. So those are some of the classes that we did. Our health office staff and our medical director also take a heads-up concussion course, so they're trained in it. And currently we're in the process, now that this all came out, to develop a plan of expanding our concussion management team to include staff, anyone in our school that may deal with a concussion. Or it could be a student, it could be a staff member, anything. There's classes they're all free classes, online training for school professionals, which includes teachers K through 12, school administrators, paraprofessionals, teachers' aides, and any other staff member that works close with students. So it's more tools that we could use to do it. All the Hastings concussion protocol packets and everything are available on the Hastings athletic website. The health office has them. They're on the board docs. We distribute them. We're going to be distributing them to the student and the parents if they sustain a concussion, so they would take that home. We're going to share them with the staff so everyone could do it. The reason why I made this into a presentation is because I'm hoping that I could use this to train all the staff members in the building. So that's why it has a lot of stuff that you click on. It has more to it than what I'm showing you now. But it's pretty much to hopefully we can get everyone on board, and anyone that wants it could just ask for it. We have it all everywhere that we found. Does anyone have any questions? If they do, you can answer me with the health office.
So Drew, before we go there, let me
Yeah.
just frame it. This, great job, thank you. So as the policy committee knows, some aspects of this were before them earlier, and it became clear we have an existing policy. If anyone's going to look at it, it's a bit of a Rube Goldberg situation, and no injury intended. Whoever may have been part of putting that together, but it came clear that instead of trying to fix those three parts, it was better just to wipe the slate clean, come up with a new policy framework. In the meantime, though, per legal, we're completely allowed to proceed with the revisions and modifications, new approach that Drew has brought forward with our medical director as is required, and that team, and with our nursing staff as required. And so we have the green light to proceed. So that's why we still said tonight, you as a board, the community need to hear where we are in concussions. We will backfill for you as a board on the policy framework, and actually we'll build that policy, if you will, from the ground up. It'll be a lot simpler, clearer, and please get into questions. But I want to thank Drew for really being instrumental with, again, the medical director and also the nursing staff to get us to this point. For all of our members of our community, not just our athletes, all of our members of the community, it's really a key health issue.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, the number you
And,
threw
oh, sorry,
out.
last thing. Melissa D had to go back and listen to a tape, and unless you speak loudly and into the mic,
Can you hear
you're
me?
not going to get heard.
Oh.
So I was asked to
Oh.
give a warning to everyone. Not picking on you, Jeremy.
I
was
thought it
asked
was
to give
me.
a warning to everybody.
Yeah, I didn't want to be on tape. I just wanted it private conversation.
All right. Jeremy, anytime you want
Hey,
to meet,
thank
we
you.
can meet.
The number you threw out there, 3.3 million, in America. Could you throw out like a similar number for our, our school district? Are we less than 50 most years? Are we less than
For the
20?
most part, we are.
Is it as low as 20?
It
for
is. I could get
Okay.
that number for you because
No,
it
just
depends
a
on
guess.
the season, depends on everything. So like this year in the fall, we did suffer more concussions than we did last year. Just the nature, sometimes we get hit. Right now we're seeing more broken collarbones lately, so that I'm sure you heard about that. So not concussions, but injuries. Injuries happen anywhere, but in athletics, you're prone to getting it. But at least we have a good team that is aware, and we're ready to take care of our students. So your children are in good hands with my coaching staff, and I couldn't do the job without having a great coaching staff and a team that I have, the health office and everyone else. They do a great job. So I feel comfortable at least going home and saying all your children are safe when they play, the best we can make it.
I'm very glad you mentioned about like the bone injuries and all those things. I have two questions. Was there the first question? Let me say that first. I was just wondering, like, this is amazing, but how did you decide to take the initiative to sort of redo I don't see people going out of their way to just take an initiative to relook at what is going on in their department in terms of something that seems to be very medical in nature, like changing the 72 hours, reading articles to see all those things to change into 24, 48 hours. Like, this is really a positive thing, and I'm just wondering what initiated that. So that's my question number one.
All right.
And then question number two was connected to what my colleague here said, Jeremy, which is that it makes sense, like, is there a preventative advice that you can give to parents? Because like the one thing is because of obviously the pandemic is playing a role in it. We've been indoors, not in much calcium or vitamin D, blah blah blah. Is there any way that the medical directors together with yourself is sort of informing athletes or parents that these are some recommendations if you intend to have your child in the athletic team that could help with this whole physique, whole physique?
All right, yeah, so the real reason, the guidelines will come out from the state ed, so we follow protocols. So the Section 1 and NISFA, the big organization with athletics, we're so into athletics, so you got someone that really loves athletics, so we're trying to make it so it's safe as possible. So with the new guidelines out there, we have to make sure that we're safe, that we keep our children safe, and we follow the guidelines that are set by the state. So that kind of sparked me to do it, but part of it also was that there is looking into the non-physical activities and other activities that could happen anywhere. So that sparked me to try to make sure we have everything in order. My coaches are all set, so we're good with athletics, but recess, kids are kids, so you're gonna get hurt, they're gonna happen, and it's just what happens out there. So now with everyone involved with it, concussions can be very serious. You know, most of them aren't, most of them are life-threatening, but if you don't tend to it and you don't understand them, it could become life-threatening. So that's something that means a lot to us. We want to make sure that our kids are safe. And we've been following procedures already, but now we're just expanding that for everyone else. As for preventing them or teaching parents, a lot of stuff we have is on the website. So all the packet, in that packet has all advice about how to, can't prevent them because you could trip on something here and get a concussion, but you could be aware. So once you get it, if everyone knows the signs of a concussion, then you'll be more apt to be able to help that person heal and to get the help that they need. So it's like back in the day, we'd get one, no one would say anything. And then, you know, it's not a good thing. You see it in the NFL, you see it everywhere, that once you get one and you keep on getting them, it gets worse. So if we're proactive with it and teach everyone what the symptoms are and signs, then we could make it that we can make the athletics even safer, and anything safer, really, for that matter.
Thank you.
No problem.
I just wanted to echo what Bill said, which on the policy committee was, you know, as we worked through some of the changes, they were just kind of small, I would say minor updates, and it was clear that these packets were the star of the show, and that you kind of had them covered, really. You just elaborated on, the committee was already in place, so kind of just elaborating on what was already done. So I just want to, you know, give you kudos for having a lot of this already in place. It's very responsive to kind of the update needed for the policy, and I think it's well done.
Oh, great, thanks, I appreciate it. I'm trying to make it easy, user-friendly is the better way to use it. It makes it easy, so everything's in one spot now. And we do have a team, and I think that, you know, the Hastings should be proud that we have a team. So it's try to highlight everything that we do good at the school, which Hastings does a great job of doing a lot of our stuff. So why not put it in a policy and do a board presentation for it to show off a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions or comments?
I have two questions. So during the day, if somebody slips and falls, like not athletics, so during the day or they're in PE or wherever they are, at each school, there's what, 2 people who know how to deal, like the nurse knows how to deal with concussions in every school, right?
Yep.
And the PE instructors?
Yeah, PE teachers are,
So in like Hillside, there's 2.
and if there's any coaches there.
Yeah, right. Okay,
There's
so
3 in Hillside.
During the day, there's people who know what
Yes.
to do for non-athletic events?
Yes.
Okay.
So what we're trying to expand into the recess monitors, because sometimes
Right, so-
not everyone's always there, so this could broaden it up, because, you know, recess is one of the most injury-prone times of the day, you know? It's not as, right? So it's like, if we could teach the people that are out there supervising them and give them the heads up with it, because they could simply call the health office, and
Yeah.
that's good, but why not?
But at least there's a health.
Yeah, there's
officer.
always someone there to
Always
protect your
somebody
kid. Yeah, your schools are safe, so there's no time that anything happens to one of your children, they're gonna be covered with someone that understands how to help them.
Got it.
And if no one's there, we call 911 if it needs
Right.
be.
Okay, perfect, because my second question is, when people saw this on the schedule, a couple of parents approached me and asked me about an athletic trainer.
Mhm.
So my understanding from what the parents said was that we had an athletic trainer, but she's on maternity leave.
Well, all right, so we
So
did
we-
have one in-house, she went on
Yeah.
maternity leave, and we are in the process of hiring another one.
Got it. Is she
So,
coming back from
she is back, but she's not gonna be the athletic trainer anymore.
Oh,
She just
okay.
came back this week, so, but
Okay.
it's a lot of responsibility with the new child, she
Got it.
didn't wanna take on that responsibility. We actually have some interviews coming up this week again, so we've been, since last year, we've been doing interviews, and we just haven't found the right candidate for us, so, to get it, but our mission and our goal is to get an athletic trainer
Yeah,
back
we,
for us.
I mean, Maureen and I could speak to that a little bit, or do you want to start? You want me to start on the athletic trainer issue? Yeah, why? Yeah, I'll be brief, and then Maureen can fill in. We've kicked this up to a higher level. Right now, trying to find an athletic trainer is very difficult, and it's incredibly high demand area, and the supply isn't what we'd hope. And so what we've had to do is say, and this will be before the board, probably in the new budget, is to say we need to make this a full, you know, within the range of this district, but kick up the remuneration, kick it up to the necessary level so we have a better shot at someone We did have a lead on somebody, but given the market, we lost out, would have been a great addition. So we've been very, very serious about adding in somebody.
Right, so like Bill said, I mean, I think as we were fortunate that which is not typical, that we had one of our staff members that also had that certification and was kind of performing a dual role for us. And as Drew mentioned, you know, her life circumstances have changed. I mean, finding one, we attempted to work with, we put out multiple bids, contacted multiple external places that contract these individuals, and no one has anyone available to give to us full time. And then we started to go through Indeed and all the different contacting schools that have programs. I mean, as we interviewed quite a few people. Many of them, actually no one is willing to come. I mean, they're in such high demand, and then the few that potentially may have come, I mean, the cost would have been, they would have been looking for an extreme amount of money. I also did a survey amongst my colleagues to see how, in Westchester County, how people are filling this position, and everyone kind of has now gone to a full-time model, which as Bill had mentioned, what that would require is probably, when it was the in-house person, was costing us roughly $25,000. This position is likely going to cost us north of $100,000, because we would have to create a full-time position with salary and benefits. And the going rate is somewhere in like the $65,000 to $75,000 range for the person plus whatever benefits. So
is this someone who's trained as like an occupational therapist?
they have like a master's degree in like sports. It's like a sports.
Yeah, they're
medicine.
certified as a
Certified.
athletic trainer. So
Actually, I'm surprised it's not. I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised they don't make more money considering the background. They're required to have a master's degree in, like, at the high level they're like 75, 80, but they really don't make more than that. And that's full time, and it's people who are working weekends. You know, it's like a 11-month position.
I should be talking to
our
our
nurses,
counseling office and telling we should talk to our counseling office and tell them to tell our kids our seniors to.
No,
that's what they
I'm
should be
telling you,
doing.
like, I would agree.
well, see, that would be the good part about having a trainer. We would do internships to help teach our children, and they're here, and they also do strength conditioning. And what an athletic trainer that I'm looking for is someone that could do preventative injury. So we're going to teach exercises and do a lot of the training that would prevent the injuries from happening in the first place. So to that effect, it's going to help our student athletes out.
Is also that, you know, because I know the athletic trainer has to be at every game or around different games, and of course I care very much if our Hastings students get injured, but I'm also concerned if a team from another town is here and one of theirs gets injured, because we need someone there to treat we don't want to get sued by another district.
I mean,
because
to
we
be
don't
honest, it's
have
not a
the
legal
person.
requirement to have one, and quite frankly, people will sue you if they get injured here, regardless if they're. I mean, I think it's just really, it is typical.
It's not a requirement to have them in
It's
the
not.
game?
It's not a
Correct.
requirement. No.
Yeah.
But the good part is all your coaches are certified. So we do help both coaches on both teams. We have a great community in Westchester and Putnam. In Section 1, if someone goes down on their field, not our student, we're all there to help. So we are certified. It's just nice to have an athletic trainer to help out with the other stuff.
An extra, the athletic trainer?
Yeah, it's essential to have, not required by law, but essential to have. But, you know, because I like to watch our sports, I'm witnessing one. A team visitor, girls basketball, rolls an ankle quite badly, but we had 3 people knowing exactly what to do for that youngster. The parents were initially upset. Where's your trainer? Where's your trainer? They then calmed down with the kind of help they were getting from a couple of the PE teachers were there, knew exactly what to do for rolled ankle. Our teachers, and also we now through the, my brain just shut out, the people were there.
Chaperones?
Thank you.
Yeah, so all our chaperones are trained in that as well.
Was trained,
So
knew
I train
exactly
all my
what to do,
chaperones, so-
ice, elevation, you know, all the things you're supposed to do, giving guidance to the family. You know, and as somebody said, even with a trainer, they would have done the same thing, and anything beyond that, you're immediately calling 911 and getting help in. So I think the board should be assured that, one, we need a trainer, we've upped the ante to get one, because Hastings should have it, but in the meantime, we're very well covered, and this kind of work, I'm pointing to the concussion slide, gets everyone thinking that much more about health.
Right.
Be it in an athletic setting or not.
Right, got it. Okay,
So,
thanks. I just,
yeah.
just looking for protecting
Yeah,
in the district.
yep.
So we like that, though. Keep on looking. We want an athletic trainer, so if you want it, just keep on pushing for it.
Great. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Anyone else have any other questions?
No? Okay,
All
excellent.
right, well, it was nice seeing you all. Have a great
Good.
night.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Drew.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to move on to our initial budget presentation from our
Good night.
official, Ms. Carvalho.
Okay. So good evening. Tonight is our first formal, kind of budget snapshot of what we're, soon be really getting into much more detail on is our 23-24 proposed school budget. We felt it was important tonight to kind of give the board some update on where we are internally. Of course, there may be some tweaks before the final overview is complete, but wanted just to kind of give you a sense of where we currently are. We've been working, we started the process around end of October, beginning of November to start compiling our next year's budget. I mean, it's really a year-long process, but that's when we really start getting into the real work around it and meeting with folks and understanding currently what current expenses are looking at, projecting out, even a rollover budget, then also building out what the needs will be for next year. So tonight we wanted to really just provide you some quick preliminary headlines. We'll really be getting into the meat of it starting February 7th. We'll be breaking down the budget in a more line-by-line item and providing a lot more information. Tonight, we're really just trying to hit some major financial figures and as well as just providing some narrative points. So, I did kind of go back and forth about putting out some actual numbers, and again, but I think what we see here is some good news. First, I wanted to share, currently, although we don't have all of the figures needed to finalize our tax cap growth number, currently, under the legal limit, we're going to be at about 373 next year. Now, I say that not to say that is where we currently are at or what we're proposing, but as you know that there is a calculation used to for districts to come up with this figure, and for us this year we do have a growth factor which would allow us to levy a bit more. Our current budget that we've been working on, and this is not the tax limit, our current budget to budget is tracking in around right below 3%, and we'll give you some just like high level details on what's contributing to both the increase as well as there's some areas in which we're decreasing. And then currently we're working on, that would produce an increased tax rate of about 2.27% for tax, the residents. I think we are really going into this budget being sensitive, although we have a lot of pressure ourselves in terms of inflation. We're also trying to be thoughtful about the impact on the budget to our residents. So again, I'm not going to go line by line on this slide, but this will be available, of course, on our website under our budget information as we start building out all of our information going into the season. But this is just a snapshot of some of the factors that go into calculating our tax cap limit each year. And these are all driven by, these are given to us by the state. And again, some of this may tweak slightly because we're still waiting on our state aid figure, which includes our building aid number, which is part of this calculation. That being said, we know that it will be in and around that 3.7 because we do have our growth factor, and we also know that the multiplier for the allowable levy growth will be at that 2%, which is the highest it can be, as well as the fact that the school district's overall tax-based growth factor is allowing us to go above that. That's where we get to the 373. As we get into the budget season, if there's some, or tonight if you have some questions about how this calculation is done, I can explain a little further. But what does that mean in terms of where we currently are proposing? So basically, the current budget we're working on would allow us to to increase our cap to 373. Our current kind of, budget we're working on is, from a dollar perspective, is about $500,000 below that limit in terms of where we think we're gonna need to hit the limit. And of course, as we're not gonna do that this evening, but you'll understand, how we're accomplishing that, once we get into our February 7th meeting.
Maureen, can you go back to the other?
Sure.
The other slide?
Yep.
Is it too annoying to take us through the lines?
Oh, no, I didn't know how much,
Yeah.
information the board wanted tonight. Okay.
And
So,
unless nobody else wants it, and I can just.
no,
have
I
mine
can do it
separately.
pretty quickly,
Okay.
but, and again, we'll be talking about this quite a bit through the budget
Right.
process. That's why I felt like, although I'm gonna share it this evening, as those numbers are finalized, we can really then, we're gonna really hit it
Right.
as we get in, but.
So like, I don't wanna belabor the point for you, like, cause I know it's, but like, tax levy,
Yeah.
FYE 2023 is 45 million, that means that from the state or from our town, this is what we get the money for, if you could just say like.
Sure.
What it is in the
Exactly.
definition, that
Yep.
would be helpful.
Okay, so the
Thanks.
tax levy is the amount of taxes that the town contributed this year toward the budget. It was the amount we levied on our residents and the businesses in town was $45 million of, that's local tax revenue, was our levy this current school year. That's the starting point in calculating your tax cap for the following year. Then there's something called a tax-based growth factor. That number is provided to us by ORPS, which is the Office of Real Property Services. That number is calculated by information they receive from the town of Greenberg in regards to, they report out for each of the municipalities under the town. Really what that number, why that is a positive or it gives you a, something to increase your levy, it's saying that the tax base in town has grown. Again, that's something that the town reports. It's a combination of either, it's supposed to be like new brick and mortar, like new buildings, extensions, expansions, or increases in assessed valuation. That information is given to the state. That produces a number times in which this number could be, it can never be less than 0. It's never negative. Even if it's going down, you never have to reduce. But it either is flat or you grow. So, actually,
this seems pretty flat.
this is actually
2%,
fairly high.
2%
In terms of a
is high.
growth factor, this is a
Oh.
growth factor before you're able to add the 2%. That's a good number. A lot of
Okay.
people, yeah, we were on, that's actually, I actually was surprised at the number,
Okay.
quite frankly. And then there's, we have to, pilots are as many, I'm not sure, people, it's, means, payment in lieu of taxes. So that's, we have a few, properties in town that have a pilot agreement that was, when they had, came online. And those have to be both added and taken off, and it's because each year to year they change, so they're kind of excluded from that other formula. So again, it's a small dollar number, I don't wanna get hung up on it, but it's just part of the overall way you calculate out your,
Is that like a religious institution?
no,
or they
it
don't
would
pay
actually,
anything?
I could tell you, I forget what the number is on Walburton, but the affordable housing, there's some of the buildings that have been done. When those contractors came and were building those buildings, they were given pilots to incentivize them to build them. And so even though they may be, the building itself may be worth, a tremendous amount, they're only, they pay this like small amount to encourage them to build it.
Yeah.
So, no, it's not religious, it's like, it's not under that, because religious are all exempt. They're a full exemption, there's no taxes paid on any religious, buildings. Okay, and then the capital levy, that calculation is you take your debt, basically what you do is you take your debt in any given year and you deduct out your building aid. That gives you that number. So when you have an increase in debt in a given year, it allows you to increase your levy. If you have a drop off of debt, it would actually decrease the amount you're able to levy. Because the idea is like you don't need to levy it because you don't have this expense. So
The
and
debt of the school, not the debt of the village.
no, the debt of the school specific, and it's fair because the idea is that was voted on separately, so when you need to pay for that, you have to be able to add that to what you're levying, because it would be impossible to pick that up in, just a growth. So these are those are the main factors, and then the last one is the inflationary growth factor, which can can never be above 2%. So it can be below 2%, but as we know, inflation is, I think now it's 6.5%, but it was at 8%, so we know it's 2%. So that's the multiplier we'll use. So when you do that whole calculation, it tells you, okay, this is under the allowable tax limit, like, and for us, as I mentioned, as a percentage, it's about 3.73, and that would allow us, to levy an additional, something in like, it's $1.7 million, and currently, we're tracking at about 500,000 below that, like about a $1.2 million increase to our levy. But again, we'll talk about it, more if you have any questions.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay, so again, these are just really quick narrative highlights, and this is just in terms of, you know, what does the budget kind of currently include? So again, we are able in our current budget to maintain all of our current curricular and extracurricular programs, as well as maintaining our class sizes that at K-12 levels. There have been some areas of proposed allocation of new funding where there's been a strong need demonstrated. So as an example, we spoke about one of those needs tonight, athletic trainer. Our current budget reflects the idea that we would need a full-time athletic trainer in that budget. That's just, you know, one item that would be then an add for current spending. We're also, again, just as I mentioned earlier, we're currently tracking under that tax cap allocation. This is the budget that we're working with. And then again, we do believe that currently the budget that we're working with is very cost effective considering inflationary pressures that we're facing. Okay. So just again, a couple quick highlights, and of course, as we go through, we'll be going through a line by line, and we're not hitting every area here, we're just kind of highlighting some of those larger areas where we're either seeing some savings or seeing some increases in costs. So currently, and again, we'll talk about it in greater detail, we're anticipating some savings in the area of special education. Now, as anyone knows, and we're not making any cuts in special education, but being it's student specific, when you have some students that are either graduating or their needs are changing, you know, you can either have some increases or decreases. So currently, based upon the students that we believe will be serving next year, we are seeing some reductions in some of those costs. So in that obviously is an area in which we're seeing some good cost savings there. Retirement. So we also have a number of retirements this year, both at the teacher level. We had some that came in late and some auxiliary staff. So just combination of all those and getting some savings and replacement costs, is also helping our budget this upcoming year.
So Maureen, you said that we're gonna, because in the previous slide you said we're keeping the same size staff.
Well,
So
we
the
are, but
saving-
the replacement would be.
The replacements
yeah.
will make less than the
Correct,
retirees,
correct.
and that's how we're saving
And
money,
it-
but
and
we're
that's
keeping the
Oh, yes,
same number of
yes,
staff.
Yes, we're not replacing people.
Right,
we're
because I
just
know
saving.
sometimes we talk about that, yes,
Correct,
it's cost
yeah.
savings.
Yeah, currently, in terms of from an FTE count, we're not proposing any reduction in staff, only where if there was a reduction, like say with aides, just based on services, then that's for
Got it.
other reasons. And again, the TRS and ERS rates, although they're not decreasing significantly, they're slightly down, but the last few years they've been up. So I think the combination, those are our retirement system payments, so the rates are slightly down, coupled with, we think our, with some retirements, the payrolls are a little bit less. So we're seeing, from a budgetary standpoint, a little bit of a savings in a few lines. And in ERS, where we have, the last few years had more tier 4 people retiring and being replaced with higher tiers. So we are seeing some decreases in those lines. And then,
Can you remind me, Maureen, I'm sorry,
Sure.
I just want to make sure I understand everything. So when a teacher retires, they get their pension, right?
Correct.
For the rest of their lives until they die, right?
yes.
And then does their spouse get it until the
It
spouse
depends
dies?
which role. I mean, pensions, all the pensions in New York State, if somebody were to get it after you passed away, that would mean you received a reduced benefit.
I
So you
understand.
can elect
Yeah,
different
you
ways
chose
for it
a
to be
different way of
distributed.
doing it.
Right, I think it's,
Right, so I'm sure that as people are living longer, forever union, and with the pension, that must be a consideration for how what you anticipated you would be paying out.
Right, so the tierettes, so the retirement system that we pay into, they factor in, they have, as they, determine what the rates will be year to year, that, it's based upon, of course, how long they believe a person will be, paid out for, but you also have a combination, so yes, that's the case, but which I'm not a fan of personally, but they did introduce new tiers, which I think the state will probably have to readdress at one point, which for newer people in the system, they're either tier 5 or 6, and then they do have to work longer, so I think the idea was that, those changes have helped, like, soften some of those other issues that may have been feeling people living longer, so they introduced these things to try to help, soften some of those.
I just asked because you always hear about Social Security and how Social Security is gonna run out,
Right.
It's sort of the same thing. I
Yeah,
wanna
well,
make
that's
sure
why they just increased the
Right.
limits on Social Security,
Yeah,
right? Like,
exactly.
now you have to pay a lot more. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
get the break until once
Right.
160 something.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that the state, I mean, the one thing about New York State retirement systems, and this is, they are, I believe, the best run and funded, and they've done the best job, like, in the country, really, in maintaining and properly funding it, and, ensuring that it, the majority of the money that's paid out really comes from interest income. It's very low. I mean, in fairness, they have done a good job, but they do factor that into what we pay in, so. Yeah, and that's why I think the new tiers were introduced as well. Okay, and then another piece in terms of, on the positive side of things, is we're also anticipating, and although the runs have not come out yet, which, we were a bit disappointed, all of my colleagues, we usually get our first stated run January 15th, and Governor Hochul now is saying that we should get them February 1st, which is pretty, it's very late for us. That being said, she also, I think I said this the last time we met, she has, in her current budget, at least in the speech she gave, said there's a commitment to the education funding, and that we should anticipate an increase in, or continued, full funding of our foundation aid. What that means for our district is that we should anticipate another $300,000 or $400,000. And, I mean, that's based upon her saying she's gonna fully fund, the formula, so.
Got it.
When you say
Because we're not
another-
fully funded, huh?
When you say another, what do you mean by that? In addition?
Since Governor Hochul last year, she made a commitment to fully fund the foundation formula over a course
So
of a
last
few
year,
years.
when you got
We
six or
received
seven?
about, I mean, we had an increase in some of our expenditure-driven aids, but then I think from the foundation aid, it was about 400,000. So, we've been short about $1 million a year for like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And last year was the first year that the formula, which is really what is supposed to be used to give us our aid, was actually, used to like produce like what we received, but they didn't fully roll it out. They said we're gonna do like an incremental fold into your foundation aid. So the budget that the state is proposing this year is increasing the pot so that they can fully fund us, which would
So we
mean.
will be incrementally up 300,000%.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, we don't have a run, but that, if you take I know what our foundation aid should be, and saying that now this is a second year phase in of meeting their obligations to not only us, but other districts, that's in and around what we should be receiving. And then we're also anticipating getting building aid back on our debt and things like that. So, we don't have the run in front of us, but I know that, I'm estimating we should at least be seeing at least like close to a $500,000 increase there. And then as we all know, I mean, we've been seeing over the last few cycles, unbelievable sales tax, in the county, and we do get a piece of that, and we're, seeing again, we're trending over. I mean, it's not a big piece of but it's a good uptick in what we're seeing, about $100,000 or so more there. Our out-of-district tuition is up. We have more students this year, and that'll help push off to our following year. And as much as the interest rate is up, that benefits us because we're making, when the interest rate was flat, we were making very few dollars on the money we do have, in our savings. We're seeing a significant increase. We're maybe 20,000, now we're trending like 125,000 for the year. So, those are positives that are gonna help us in balancing next year's budget. So, but then in the areas of growth, and again, just, we'll get into these in much greater detail. Of course, in every place, salaries and health insurance go up each year, just part of where we're seeing some increases. Transportation is, transportation contracts, under New York state law are actually, their increase is based upon actual the cost, CPI. So even this year, our contract went up 8%, like that, they get that, like automatically, because I think the thinking is if they do not receive it, they may not be able to stay in business. So, when you have a contract, unless you go back out to bid or break the contract. So, two things as far as this, we are seeing an uptick in our transportation costs, partially because of that, and partially because we have more out-of-district students. We'll get into that in greater detail when we unpack the budget, and we're gonna, we'll break it down so you can kind of see, how that looks and what's the breakdown there. In addition, our in-district provider just notified us that they will not renew, so we're anticipating about a 25% increase in the cost of in-district service next year.
Wow.
And including sports and trips, because we had an excellent contract, and my understanding now is they may be selling the business, and I know I'm using what I believe we'll pay based on what our other local schools are paying for their in-district runs, so.
Is it gonna be a problem that we don't have that? You have to find somebody else? I mean,
I mean, I'm hoping that, what I'm hoping is that they're not renewing this contract, but I'm hoping that they win the contract that has been I mean, they're very good. They've provided us excellent service, and it really just is for them. They actually dropped anyone that they were doing in district, and, I think they would like to renew with us. I think they're selling part of the business, and, it's just, they're providing, they can make, I think realistically, I think they provided it, but they feel the need to keep it, so.
And this is for all of Freeburg?
No, we had our own in-district contract, but, the rest of the quads had their own, but they were paying a lot more than we were for our in-district. When I say, I'm talking about the per bus cost, obviously they pay more because they have more children, but I'm talking about the actual cost per bus. So, we are, but the good news is that although it's a big increase in cost, we don't have a lot of in-district busing. I mean, comparatively to like a lot of our neighbors who we don't have we have a limited transportation program in district. Right, like Irvington's K-12, they bus everybody, right?
Yeah.
So their in-district is like 5 times what ours is.
So what's the difference between the quad?
We have to
Yeah.
speak in the
bus
mic, or it's not gonna get
Oh,
picked up.
sorry.
That's all right, thanks, sorry.
I was just wondering, what's the difference between the quad
Yep.
agreed busing and the in-district bus?
Okay, so the quad is all of our out-of-district
Correct.
runs. We share all of those runs for our private and special education students. The in-district is only our students, and we had our own contract. And part of it is they use the same provider, but I mean, each in-district is just, their own students, so, they actually happen to all be using the same bus company for their in-district, not ours, like another one. So I'm basing it kind of on their cost, and, but I think even beyond the cost, which is, it was something to be expected at one point or another. I kind of was a little bit worried the last few years, like knowing what other people were paying, but they've been a very, very good bus company to work with, and, even for our, I mean, I don't even think I told you that yet, but, they provide all of our sports and our field trips and things like that, and a lot of districts, like, a lot of the buses in, other districts, they're not even providing trips during the day for them. They're like, we can't do it, so they have to get charters, so like, it has like a larger impact, like, in terms of like how that'll look, moving forward with even like other things we use them for. So we're hoping that even if it's an increase in cost, that we, or
Good
cost,
service,
maybe
yeah.
they may still with us, but that's just like an example. I mean, transportation, it's extremely expensive.
I have a follow-up.
Sure.
So, do we have any Westchester, Putnam that may be doing the same model, that, like having their own in-basin, with other companies that we could look at to see whether they can work with us?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a few major bus companies that do all of Westchester, and I think, we'll get somebody. I mean, I think the worst case is if we could be higher. I mean, I'm just concerned, of course, we have a relationship with the company, and I think, we also, drivers that have been working with
Correct.
students for years and parents. I think, you know, there's a comfort level with them, and I think that's, although of course, you know, the cost is a big factor, I think it's also, you know, we feel very comfortable with them, but, you know, I think we're actually, Melissa, I had to move the meeting in district because we have to go out to bid, so, like, we weren't anticipating that, so we have to hurry up and get out to bid, because that'll help us, financially. And again, we will talk, in greater detail. I mean, I think as we know, the greater piece of the, expense is the out-of-district cost, and we'll get into that. You know, one of the things, and I'm not suggesting it would be for this year, but, you know, long term, we may want to consider, do we want to, again, possibly within district, like, would you ever want to extend, the limits, like, to reduce some of, you know, I don't know, like, in some situations where kindergarten, as an example, we bus all children, like, if we were to, like, extend that to, like, match, or we went to a mile of, you know, K-5, we may be able to reduce our district busing. You know, but again, I think when you make this, you really have to have an understanding of the impact, and I'm not suggesting it, I'm just saying, if I would have known that this was going to occur, I may have suggested we look at it, but I think now it would be too short to look at it prior to, like, moving forward with what we existing have. Because as you know, any change requires a referendum vote on transportation, so, and that's just like another conversation. Sometimes districts will look at that when, you know, especially when they're making some changes and things, so, that may be something, just because we could possibly on our in-district reduce busing just by tweaking a couple of the mileages, but you know, in fairness, I don't know the impact it would have on everyone.
Marie, can I ask you a question? You know, if there are upcoming costs associated with some of the drainage remediation, is that included in
No.
these numbers?
No.
Okay, that's not yet determined, so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I mean, I think, and then, yes, so just then to highlight the other areas, I spent a lot of time on transportation, but it was a good way just to notify everyone, we just found out about the in-district this week. But then also the utility costs, again, everyone knows this, I mentioned earlier the facilities committee meeting, the cost of our, you know, utilities, as I'm sure everyone is experiencing in their own homes, is, you know, skyrocketing, and we're seeing like tremendous, even, you know, we increased it quite a bit this year, but, you know, it's exceeding what we budgeted for, and I don't know, I think we're just kind of anticipating at least what we're currently paying. We're not, so it's significant enough for us in terms of a budget driver. And then again, security costs, I spoke briefly about this with the facilities committee. We're in need of additional security. We, you know, upped our security when we feel we had to, and I think, and the cost of security is going up. And this is an area where there's, you know, it's really reflecting what is kind of currently needed, what we're sometimes currently doing, and much of it being driven by not only what we do in terms of during the day, but a lot of what's happening after hours here. So we'll get into greater detail in regards to how, you know, some suggestions around that, but currently that is an area of growth for us. And again, debt service. Yep.
Regarding security, do you mean specifically like staffing or all aspects of
Not
security?
staffing mostly. I mean, I think there are some other costs in there, but the majority are on the basis the actual guards. And then
Maureen.
debt service, we have it, last year we had the first large piece of work. Oh, sorry, did somebody say something?
Jeremy?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yep. Could you speak a little bit on any estimates you're using, or is this not the right meeting? I see we're coming in at under 3% growth, and then last year we used about $1.7 million of appropriated balance or reserve funding, and we've certainly had an appropriated balance for a lot of years in a row. Is some of that included already in this number? Good. And is this the right time to talk about, or should we wait till we see numbers later on?
No, well,
Yep.
on the growth side, you're talking about the revenue side.
That we might only need a 3% increase in our tax levy. Is that based on some estimations?
Yeah, so.
Is it using some estimations of using an appropriated balance, that we're not going to spend everything from our last tax levy?
Yes, some of
And
it.
that we're going to spend down reserves again to get that 3%?
Some
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, and that's actually the tax rate we're looking at is around 2.8. The budget to budget's like tracking at 3, and then the tax rate's actually like at 2.5.
Yeah, just looking at budget to budget, it's tracking at 3, but that would only be if we're still doing what we did last year.
Yeah.
Spend some of our reserves, and we're planning that we'd have an appropriated balance at the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll get into more detail, I know I did.
That's perfect, thank you.
Thanks. And then in terms of the areas of budget growth, again, we had majority of our debt came on the books this year, and then we have, because of the timing of the borrowing, we're taking on our full, like, debt payment, which we'll be paying off now for the next 13 years on the last bond that we issued. So, that's kind of like the last piece, but that, again, from a budget to budget perspective is part of that increase of 3%. But again, we'll really get into each line and really understand how, how each piece is, factoring in. So that's
So
it.
let me just add a couple of things. I'll be really quick. One, I really like this. We didn't do it last year, I don't know before, because for you as a board, and in many ways for me as superintendent, this is the decision sheet. This is the decision sheet, and boards can get down into the minutia of $54–55 million and get stuck there and lose sight of ultimately what are you trying to do. Because this sheet captures what's the impact for us as a district, for our students, for our staff, and then what's the impact for the taxpayers. It's all right here. And so we wanted to start with this, give you the headlines, both the figures and then the big narratives, the kind of swings and all the rest. And then on the 7th, we'll come back with the kind of detail you're used to, but hopefully you can keep coming back to this because, dare I say, for at least for me as a superintendent, what we bring to you and then for your board what you decide on, this is decision point here. And as you can see, given where we're settling, which is, I think, a very good number, I should know my fellow New York State districts well. I don't. I have a sense of Connecticut. Most of them are coming in north of 5% right now in the budgets they're bringing to their boards. Greenwich does 2.9 with no health insurance in. The town picks that up. Most of the other districts that I know are north of 5 in terms of what's being recommended. So you can see that there's been a lot of hard work here to bring a budget that I think gets you very close to where you're going to probably want to be. And also to Doug's reference, the facility committee is looking at some potential challenges we have. So that may give you some room to make some adjustments if you need be, given that Maureen's saying what she's building here for you is still below that tax cap, giving a little margin for some significant work. So I just want to thank Maureen on your behalf for bringing this kind of clarity early. So thank you for that. At least help me. I don't know about you. Help me.
Well, you were ready for the Arctic, but we've gotten it in a regular temperature in here now.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Well, I just have one quick question, Maureen. Are there big areas of requests that have been discussed? You don't have to go into the details now. New programs, new things that we've essentially decided to table or wait on for subsequent years. I mean, I know the budget managers in the school districts are hard at work putting in the buildings, are hard at work putting their thoughts together on programs for next year. I'm just curious, are some of those conversations still ongoing? Have they kind of been discussed and tabled or anything? And if there's nothing big that's coming up, that's fine. I'm just curious if there's any big strands of thought.
I think obviously, like, anytime we're in the budget, there are things in which, like, they're discussed, like either whether they fold it into their documents or just in conversation, people start, thinking about needs that, because of course, we talk about the upcoming budget, but we're, in those conversations, we're also talking about, like, 5 years of budgets in some way. So, as an example, I won't get into the exact conversation, but say in special education, they may be, as we're talking about what we're proposing for this upcoming year, we're also looking at what programs or services or students, we actually do look at that. So some of it is like, it may be not for this year, but there are some things that we know are coming down the pipe in upcoming years. One of the things, and once we present the budget, we'll mention this and show with this how that factors in. We still do have some of that federal money still coming into our budget next year, which is helping somewhat defer some of the costs. So like without that money, there would have been some increase in like in terms of like, even some, I know there's been some talk about like using up some areas, and I think we're able to handle some of that through the grant money. But we're also looking at.
But that's non-recurring,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But I think what we're really trying to do with both of our facilities and our budget planning is, as we've been meeting with everyone, we're looking at immediate needs as well as like 5-year needs. So I think, I don't know if we'll be able to do it in this, as we're presenting this budget, or maybe it comes after this budget's finalized, just so people can kind of see what we're projecting out next year, but then hear, you know, how that may lay out in the future year. So,
Yeah.
yes, there was some conversation, I don't wanna, and I think because we're in the process of portrait work,
Right.
also, how that falls into the future budget discussion. So we wanna be thoughtful and be thinking, because sometimes if we're concerned about getting like a one-off, and then if we're not able to sustain it, knowing that there may be something to follow here. So that it's all kind of, yes,
Well, yeah,
but
that's-
like
that's where
also
I'm-
like within the context of like multi-year budget cycles.
I mean, that's what I'm getting at, which is, and you and Melissa are probably having conversations about this already, but, you know, how do we take the narrative of the portrait and the things we're trying to evolve curricularly in the district and start to translate that into a multi-year financial plan? Because I think we really have to get out ahead of that from a narrative perspective with staff and community members and students and, you know, a lot of different people, so, okay.
Doug, thank you. Maureen, thank you very much, and we'll look for, I'm sorry, are there any other questions or comments?
I just had one question on, is there any funding that's going away that needed to be considered?
Yes, so, right now, it looks as though, the way we've kind of, been able to budget and with the federal funds that we've had, there was a time there was gonna be a larger drop-off, but I think right now, we believe that we'll have enough to like kind of sustain things. And some of the things were non-recurring anyway. There were kind of things that were, like as an example, with the federal funds, and we have not factored this in, we've been able to increase our nursing staffing much higher. I mean, we actually have like an extra nurse, have you, but it was fully funded by this grant funding, and that actually is taking us through the remainder of this year. I mean, it's been wonderful to have and definitely necessary, quite frankly, but that's an example of something, but currently we're not holding that nurse, you know, back in, because we felt that was really needed during the last few years, but, you know, wonderful to have, but would not be necessarily, if we were gonna be adding something to our budget, I don't think right now that's in what we're thinking.
Okay, Maureen, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we look forward to the broader report on February 7th. Moving on, we have a report from our superintendent, the update and district highlights, which are posted online. If you want to say.
Yeah, so it's all there in the document. The document went up online this afternoon. It's there for you to look at later. I just want to flag 3 areas right up top in it. First, the portrait work, which Melissa Szymanski's been taking the lead on, but I'm actively paying attention, and that's an approach that actually a lot of organizations use that give a little freedom at the top to sort of have a little objectivity as how it's emerging. As it's been reported here, February 8th, March 21 are the dates for the concentrated action planning. I'm pleased that we've had a number of faculty. It's really a faculty-focused effort right now. It's really important we get the commitment and the ownership there, and then we will be reporting out and getting a lot of other input as necessary. Melissa's done a great job of facilitating it such we have some new faculty stepping forward from each of the 3 schools, new administrators, as well as some returning administrators to give a through line. So I'm feeling pretty good about that work and that group that's going to bring you material soon. And I would think in terms of the budget, really think about next year as the big pivot point for the portrait. Some bit of it this year, but just you can look at the dates here, that while kind of parallel to when they're doing the work in action planning, you'll be digging into the budget. So there are ways some of them may be included this year, but it's really more and more for next year. And that's another reason we're being cautious and bringing you a pretty conservative budget, if you, at the end of the day, agree with that. Second thing is security and safety update. I had to write what I had to write here, which is, like it or not, my first order of business is safety and security. You would think it's intellectual, you'd think it's emotional, you'd think it's the growth and academics of our student. Well, in this day and age, and I don't have to go into detail, this is a time we still have to be so focused on safety and security. So it's brief here, but every word matters. I think families, staff, all the rest should feel very assured that we do everything we can to make this a very safe and secure district. And indeed, we're taking a step tomorrow that I guess no, it's been announced yet. All middle schools now will come in through a single door. During COVID, we'd spread that out, but it's quite clear, like at the high school, like at the elementary school, we need to bring everybody in through a single door. And that's just to help us monitor access to the facilities. Fortunately, in the region, it's been minor issues, but just in the last couple weeks, there's been access issues into buildings around us. No real, fortunately, concerns, but whenever you get that, you've got to be attentive to how are we managing who's coming in and out of our buildings. The partnership with Alteris is really working well right now. Michelle Monahan, who's our person on site, is actually a former educational administrator, and that's working actually very nicely hand in glove with the law enforcement side of Alteris, and also working very well with the Hastings Police Department. So I want to assure people, I have to say there's never any guarantees. At the same time, we are paying really close attention. Lastly, pleased to announce, thanks to the work of Melissa DeLibera, Nancy Gallardi, and others, that we're going to bring to the community on February 1 the proposed calendar for next year. That's about 5 or 6 weeks ahead of when we thought we'd be able to bring it. It's a confidential draft right now. We feel pretty good, the calendar committee, as to what we're going to bring to the community. It'll be out February 1. I'll blast it out with the help of Jackie Saviano. And then you as a board on February 7th. You've got a pretty busy meeting coming at you. But February 7th, you'll start deliberating on that calendar. And then if all goes well, February 28th, you will vote on that calendar. So then families and staff and all will know what the plan for next year is. So I just wanted to flag that for you. So there are other things in the document I won't go into now, but I just wanted to raise up verbally those pieces.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So Bill, I'm just curious about, it's interesting that you say that FMS used to all come in through one door. I guess I never experienced that because my kids are post-COVID. My question is, you know, Hillside, the entrance is different. You know, you walk in and it kind of disperses. And then the entrance to the high school is much wider and you disperse. I'm curious about the bottleneck potential issue of such a narrow, small entryway.
I mean, I think the reality is, like most schools, I mean, the school, it would be nicer if it was a larger entranceway, but I think we're gonna have to use our staff to kind of help, like with the flow of students coming in. It is preferable, I mean, I think we have a real management issue and security issue around the doors, and I think right now, with the current staffing level, I think if we had increased guards and things, we could do something different, but the best practice is always a single entrance and exit for students, and actually for staff as well, but, I think we'll at least get the students through there, maybe we'll look at areas where we can kind of help the staff in as well, but
I can add to that too. I think I was great a while ago at standing outside and greeting. I'm great at the end of the day now. At the beginning of the day, I'm not as much there, but I've been at the high school enough to know that's actually still a very tight corridor for about probably 15 yards. Because you come in through that same width of door, you're then in an area hallway going upstairs into another set of doors that then does open up.
Right.
So I'm optimistic we can make this work, and we'll adjust if we have to, but the reality of managing 3 or 4 entry points, we just think it's better to try and go back to that concentrated entry. And if it's too much of a jam not working, we'll come up with some other solutions. But we just think we need to do that. And yes, in the sense at Hillside, you've got you got your kindergarten entry and your other entry, but it's still more tightly controlled. And we just want to take a shot at that and see if we can do it.
So maybe, like, I guess then just, inform the parents if it seems to be a slowdown, they might want to get their kids a little bit earlier because of the new procedure. If after a couple of days, that's I think is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, logistically, this building is a lot more challenging. I mean, obviously, like, even the Hillside setup in terms of the entryway doors are designed much better in terms of, even from a security lens. So we've been having some issues and, some concerns, and I think it is, we'll do this and we'll monitor it, and then if we have to consider a modification to that, we'll have to staff correctly to make sure it's safe. I think that's what we want to make sure.
Great, thanks. And I just want to say thank you for showing the calendar. I'm sure everybody looks forward to seeing it. I appreciate you guys like jumping through these hoops to do it. The entire community appreciates it, so thank you, and I'll thank you again in a couple weeks, but it's very much appreciated.
Yeah.
I had a, sorry, let me move this closer. So Dr. Makesi, I was just wondering, I know that a year or two ago, there was a lot of conversation concerning mental health, kind of support. I remember the first presentation from the security team about the state of all the security that is going on, like all of these things that are happening in our schools. Some aspect of mental health needs to be looked at. I know that, I'm not sure if Dr. Samensky had mentioned something in connection to what is being done with regards to the whole collective social emotional learning piece. So my question is, are we looking like in tandem or like, yes, strengthening security, which is of utmost importance, like look at what is happening around us in the world, but what are we doing about the mental health piece that used to be really something that a lot of our community members were very much interested in, but it doesn't seem to be talked about in recent times?
Well, I mean, I mean, that's a big topic, and I think I'm quite pleased with what we could come back and talk about in depth. And I think part of the importance of this budget is right now we're able to maintain every single position in the district, no layoffs, no cuts. And even some of those 5% budgets I'm talking about, they're still laying people off in those other districts on the other side of the border. I haven't caught up with Westchester. But I think the core of that, because you tend to lay off further away from the classroom, which means you may go to those critical services that are there. So right now we're very strong on the counseling side, very strong on the social, emotional side, social workers, psychologist side. And then I think when we get into any crises, and I spend a lot of time in Hillside, I'm now guest reading in the 5th grade, like it or not, I'm in there with them, and I have immense confidence in our classroom teachers to be highly sensitive to what's happening, and with the number of adult presence we have in the room. So I think maybe once we get through the budget process, I think a great topic to come back to the board with would be that topic, and Melissa Szymanski put that together, I'm quite confident, to say here's what we are doing around mental health and where we might have some gaps. Not about individually, but just systematically we might have gaps. The Panorama survey has been really, really important. So we have data on this and look at that. We're looking at some alternatives to Panorama maybe, if that gives us better information back. So it's a great question, and one I think we should probably help answer so there's clarity for the community that here's the imagery. We've got to be very strong on the soft, and we've got to be very strong on the strong, if you get my point.
Yes.
You know, and so if that helps. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lang. Moving on, the administrative reports from Dr. Szymanski are posted in board docs, and so we're going to move on to business items. Are there any questions or comments related to business items 1 through 9?
I did have a question. The racial development in adolescence workshop, I forget which number that is.
Number 1.
We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. There was a memo on racial development in adolescence workshop. I printed it, so I'm not sure which
It's number 1. Number
Okay.
1.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Okay.
So, Dr. Matteo Toledo has been working closely with Ms. Borelli at the middle school level, and there's been conversation actually across the district, also at the diversity committee about restorative practices. This particular memo is about working with Dr. Diane Goodman, who actually predates me. So she's done some professional learning in district and has been extremely well received with the faculty. Some questions were coming up about especially the interest in providing this professional learning actually came from some questions about our affinity groups and helping understand racial development and why this would be of value to students, and making sure that we're strengthening our culturally responsive practices, just really understanding racial development in adolescence. So for students in developing their racial identity. So this was designed to, just for the faculty, thinking about how students grow, how they develop, why an affinity group would be helpful, and the research basis behind all of that. And so that came directly from some conversations, both with students and with faculty.
When we have like a 1 hour, whether it's this topic or any topic, if there's a 1 hour staff meeting, is that generally done before school, after school, or during school?
It's usually at a faculty meeting after school. So it's at the end of the day, those are built into the calendar, so they're regularly recurring meetings. And so, for example, I presented on the computer science and digital fluency standards. So we have some upcoming faculty meetings. We've been partnering with Leslie Cardo. She'll be coming in. We worked with the lead learners on that during the day, but then to just make sure that the larger faculty is aware, that will be built into a faculty meeting. So some of the topics at faculty meetings are professional learning based, some are building based discussions on like structural day-to-day administrative things that need to be discussed.
So staff is all required to go?
Yes.
Right. Is that admin and teachers, or this is just teachers?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the admin typically facilitated.
Right. And it's part of their contract. We don't pay extra for them to go to these meetings. It's built
Correct.
into the contract. Okay. Like a certain number of meetings a year.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's right.
Thank you.
I had one other question on
Of
the lunch recess behavior. So is that kind of on the job training for that group, sort of in the periods that they reference there? They're kind of in recess and sort of saying, hey, this is what to look for, sort of on the job
Number
training.
seven. Just
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, so the idea was that this would be supplemental from some of the grant monies. And so that's specific to Hillside, we identified a need. And so that was meant to be coming from one of our grants.
Okay, so number 7, the expectation is it will be covered by a grant? Is that what?
No, it is going to be.
Oh, it is covered by a grant. Okay.
Because it was part of like that. It's both of these things, so it's both grants.
Okay.
So it was part of something that was like kind of allocated that we had like identified resources.
Got it. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments related to?
Just that I think that Racial Equity Day Innocence Project seems really cool. It's really nice to have that come in.
Agreed.
I'd like to hear about how it goes afterwards, if that's possible.
Yeah, if I may just read something that came up, and this is, I think it's appropriate to read that now.
Sure.
Based on what you said, I actually also like the way that they have it in that regard. So this was a discussion that my colleagues and I, we sort of put it together with regard to race. He said the fact is that there cannot be racism without the race concept. However, can we strive to have an established equitable race concept that does not introduce racism? Well, that's a question that we are yet to answer. The lens to view human differences and enrichment of our diversity is heavily marred by the interjection of the idiom race. As race stands currently at a very early age when children begin to recognize and learn human differences, the concept of race is interjected with the ugliness that comes with it. And I've experienced that kids are not even seeing anything, and then all of a sudden race steps in. So, I mean, I'm not going to bore you with all this academic jargon conversation that we're having, but I feel like exactly what you say, seeing the approach makes it neutral and doesn't sort of, although they are using the term race, which I personally don't like, but it doesn't matter what I think, but I feel like it's just cleaning up that ugliness that is heavy, is tagged to race. So I like that too.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? business items 1 through 9?
Just one thing, and that's the audit response. I mean, I think in the scheme of things, these were somewhat minor findings, so I would
That I
say
actually
congratulations.
missed including the date of completion on it, and when we put it in, we noticed that, so typically, you know, they would like just to kind of show that whether it's a year or 2 years or a month, the implementation dates, and there were a few of those implementation dates that when I sent the memo, I hadn't included, so I wanted to include those, and this way I could re-upload it to the state.
I was gonna say that these are somewhat minor, so
Yeah.
it's good. It's good news, not
Yeah, it's
necessarily.
good.
Oh,
to
thank you,
criticize
no, but
anything.
I actually have them in front of you, but I did accidentally, like, I think when we were typing it, we didn't include the date of completion, so when we put up, when we load that up in our portal, it like kicked out an error, and I'm like, why isn't it there? Then when I looked at the board minutes, I realized that the memo hadn't included it, so I'd rather you just revise and approve the new one instead of, you know, I mean, I'm still within the time frame. I just didn't wanna just add the date without you saying it, so.
Okay, no, thank you, thank you. Any other questions? Business items 1 through 9? Is there a motion to approve business items 1 through 9?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Moving on to placement and services for CSE and CPSE. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve our placement and services for CSE and CPSE?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to personnel. Any questions or comments about our appointments?
I have a question about the English language arts teacher. Is that a replacement position?
Oh, Mr. Marciano?
Yeah.
We have someone out on leave right now, and the leave, was extended beyond what we originally thought, and because it's an extended leave, we wanted to make sure that there was a consistent, certified veteran staff member stepping in.
Got it, thank you.
It's certainly that, so, yeah. Moving on, I guess we'll vote separately on this. Is there a motion to approve our appointments?
So moved.
I'm sorry? I was gonna just pull it out just for comments, you know.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any questions about our amendments? Is there a motion to approve our amendments?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to our retirements. Are there any questions or comments about our retirements?
Let me just, for the board, clarify that at the end of this year, we'll have a celebration of retirees. There may be some more coming, as may happen. And we will handle that maybe the old-fashioned way, different than last year. We'll set up a separate reception around a board meeting. So yes, you're all here for a board meeting, but allow you to do your business and not have that bump into the reception. We'll be identifying a date sooner than later so that the retirees can notify their families. I think we already have the windfall of this location. We're up at Hillside, so it'll be that much nicer space. So it'll be a planned event. The principals of those retirees will be the ones speaking. So we'll really try and make this a fitting event for the retirees. So I just want to let the board know that now. You may, at any point, you have full right to make comments, but I just want to let you know that'll be the celebratory point late in June, if that's fair. I don't know if I missed anything. Melissa, would you add anything to that?
We look forward to some additional comments on these wonderful faculty, and we'll be very sad to lose all of them and wish them well.
Thank you, thank you. Are there any questions or comments about our retirements? Is there a motion? I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that I'm gonna hold my comments then until, because I have actually received, quite a few comments from, parents and students about people who are listed, but I don't wanna be the outlier and say anything tonight.
You can speak whenever you'd
I'll-
like. I mean,
I'll
more the
keep my
merrier.
jets until, you know, everybody else wants to come forward and have their say, but.
Okay, that'll be that event, right? So, okay. Is there a motion to approve retirements?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Lastly, our leaves of absence. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve our leaves of absence?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to our minutes. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes from our last board meeting, January 10th? Is there a motion to approve our minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Going on to policies, this is first read, so we're not voting on it. This is field trip and excursions, policy 4531, I'm sorry. Is anybody who can update us on what the nutshell is?
I'm happy to speak
Oh,
to
okay,
this.
sure.
So you'll see many different colors in this particular
Yes.
one. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of back and forth, multiple rounds of revisions. And really, we wanted to make sure that we gave a very close eye to field trips and excursions with a hopeful lens that we'd be able to do some more travel moving forward through COVID. And there was some interest from our world languages department to start thinking ahead on that. So as we're engaging in discussions about curriculum work, this was something that came up, and we wanted to make sure we took another close eye on this particular policy to make sure that we were clear, transparent, and also being effective to districts as well, making sure that we did everything orderly, right down to, thinking about the factors for the field trips, thinking about associated cost considerations, and then ultimately referencing that we'll be establishing some guidelines which will serve as a protocol that sit alongside this field trip and excursions policy, that would be able to articulate if we were to work with an outside vendor in terms of coordinating the finances, which many districts do. So we wanted to just be able to keep a very close eye and work to that end.
Thank you. So with this policy, would you say that we're just trying to sort of open up our options, but have it all be sort of contained within the policy? It's sort of...
We thought it needed to be more robust, especially if we were thinking about international travel.
Oh,
So we just wanted to make sure that it was more comprehensive.
for the board retreat, perhaps?
The detail really reflective of things that either we've run into in the past or things that we anticipate running into.
So did the impetus come from the group itself? This wasn't like a,
So the
this
impetus
wasn't like a NISBA directed, hey, you have to
Yeah, no, it was not a required revision. It was something that we put on the radar.
Okay.
So we brought it back to.
Because it does
today.
seem very much more detailed and robust and expansive than before, and
Yeah,
I have kids in high school, so like they have not had the opportunity to have had these field trips. So for them in particular, I have two who are going on an overnight trip, not that far away, but they're like, oh my God, it's an overnight trip, and to them it's like such a welcome respite after so much time of being shut away from the world. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we're exploring, revisiting more expansive trips for a student population that has really been buffeted by the winds of change over the past several years is really, it was a very welcome policy read.
Yeah.
That's all I'm
Yeah.
going to say.
Yeah.
A little color here, if you don't mind, Melissa, may help. I mean, the question was actually called by Stephen Lopez, who had a creative idea about a trip, and then a number of us have experience leading other districts where trips have been a challenge. We then had actually the break of COVID to kind of think about things, and in the going back, some districts are not going back to allow travel of much nature, be it maybe local domestic field trips, but not international. And Melissa's had experience elsewhere, Maureen's had experience here, I've had experience both good and bad, but we thought we value the opportunity, we value the educational experience. It could be domestic, rare international, but it might happen. We just want to have it structured well to provide the best opportunity, be equitable, fair to any student and family, And also, there's a red line in there you may see about if indeed an international other trip gets canceled, who's protected in that? And that's based on some experiences that I certainly had as superintendent. I can't speak to Melissa and her previous districts. But we want to provide for it, but put some guardrails up, if that's what you're seeing.
Can I ask whether there was a consideration, and I know it's a first read, so it will be revisited, but now that it looks like the Boston thing is the situation, my ask is, are we considering including volunteer parents that could drive? Sometimes we get parents to join trips, but also volunteering their vehicles to, I'm not sure if it's something that we want to consider. Also, what kind of protection if something should happen, so I'm just wondering, are we considering to that extent of expansion? So
Transportation is referenced within this policy. It is the assumption in the way that it's written is that a student will be taking the district provided transportation. It requires a note if someone is not coming back on the district provided transportation. So there is a nod to that, and on February 11th, remember that that was a recommendation. While it doesn't explicitly say whether or not someone can be in a vehicle, there's practice in general where, for example, a faculty member wouldn't be driving a student somewhere. It's not a typical thing. What happens is that there's a bus that's chartered or there's some sort of articulation, and that would be, if there's anything that would be relevant to that, that would be the parental, the permission slip that needs to be signed and outlined. One of the things that we did think about in this digital age, and also making this process less onerous for families and also for teachers, is building in a little bit of leeway too through that permission slip while I'm on the topic to be able to work digitally, so through Google Forms. And we do have some language that we've been working with to put into digital forms that connect the intention of the electronic signature and making sure it's to a parental email address. So that's just an add-on based on something relevant to your question, based on where that would sit. So anything that's relevant to the actual, if I have to give permission for this, would sit within that.
Yeah, I mean, very simply, we would not want to encourage volunteer parent transportation of students for district sponsored. We're opening up all kinds of issues there. Yeah, and even related to our own employees, singleton driving is a thing of the past. But you can see here language about there may be extenuating circumstances that lead to a student returning, and that's why there's permission slips. But simply, we would not allow. I don't think we'd allow it. I don't think we'd allow to have parents as volunteers be the source of transportation for district sponsored.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just want to say personally, I'm very pro field trips. We live in such a rich historical area with so much, we're right in New York City and Sleepy Hollow and everything else. So I'm super excited, and I hope the teachers take advantage of any educational opportunities outside the classroom.
community learning.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Stransky. It looks like a heavy lift, and thank you to the policy committee as well. Moving on to renaming of facilities. This is something that this was. Oh, where's Maureen?
She had to step out.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I can backfill if you need
Sure.
be. So the village has been working actively through the interests of a number of residents, including trustees of the village, to honor Ali Marpet for his success athletically. And the village had settled on the solution for naming being the walkway headed down to Reynolds Field. You're not asked to vote on this because, and the board president and former board presidents may understand the kind of the ins and outs of village and district here. I think this decision has largely been made, if I'm understanding correctly, maybe a misunderstanding. But we think in the district from an administration standpoint and staffing the teachers, faculty, Drew, we think this is a nice solution. The naming of anything is complex and has to be done carefully. And there have been thoughts about renaming part of a street or a whole street. This, though, I think is focused, it's specific, and it's related to Mr. Burpett's area of achievement.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to add anything, Maureen, or it got covered while you were out? Yeah, so again, it's a discussion item. Maureen can explain anything I left out. Alex, you may have insights you could add if you want.
Yeah, that was pretty
Bill, did you
good
speak about
summation.
how this has been an
Ye-
ongoing
yes.
conversation? Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, so as, so part of, as they're thinking about, considering naming a street in Hastings, the idea was kind of around, like, they would like it to be around the school facility. I think, then they started to think about would it be, maybe better option instead of naming a street to consider maybe naming it. So again, they, as the board knows, this proposal brought forth. Sorry, I just went.
That's
And,
okay.
and I think, I think we, would be in support of it. I think, naming things, we're always, as Bill, I think, was mentioning, we're, have to be very careful around, thinking about, why we do certain things. But, this was already something that had been, at the village level been discussed.
Right.
And I think there's a good amount of support, around the village for thinking about doing this, so.
Do we know when this would take effect?
Well, if the board were to move forward with, approving.
So we are voting on it?
No, I mean, we could bring it to tonight, we weren't expecting you to vote on it
Okay.
this evening, but, first put it here as a new business item, and then I think we would be looking for some guidance from the board, whether we would bring this to the board to, vote on this, and then if the board were to move forward with allowing this to occur, then, I think we were thinking about, partnering either with, I haven't spoken to them personally yet, but in the person I spoke to talked about maybe the Hastings booster, Hastings athletic boosters would like to be involved in, helping with the signage or something, and how that would, when that would
Okay.
occur and
Gotcha.
all that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, just speaking for myself, I certainly would endorse this. I think it's kind of miraculous is too big a word, but it's a very impressive story, Allie's path, and especially, I think if people know it, it's inspiring, especially because he was a student who sort of lost interest in football, and it was actually a Hastings teacher that talked to him about continuing on and got him to stick with it. And it's been sort of an underdog story all along. He went to Hobart. I guess he was rated, they were expected to be drafted in the 4th round. If memory serves, he was drafted in the 2nd. Went to Tampa Bay, which at the time was a fairly weak franchise, and then Brady went to Tampa Bay and then won the Super Bowl. So it's, and he's been back to the district often. He's supported the district, so I think it certainly checks the boxes for me that it's a good fit.
But I think to your point, I think a lot of the support, I personally know that he's done a lot in terms of either, even working with the Booster Club and raising money and, coming to games and speaking to students. So I think the fact that, even since the onset of when he first, got his hit, he has been back and supporting Hastings athletics consistently. So I think, he's very much still connected to the community as well. So
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we should put the focus, and I'd like to applaud the 5 village trustees for getting this started. I think it definitely overlaps with our school, and if in the end we have to vote on it, I think it'll be very easy to support this idea. If we don't have to vote on it because it's a village, then I just like to applaud their efforts and their initiative. It matches up in every way the way our school district wants to celebrate achievement, the walkway right to the football field for an exceptional athletic accomplishment of a very young man who's still going to have many more career decisions moving forward. But thank you for bringing this onto our agenda, and thank you to the trustees of our village.
So I think the next step would be that we will bring something for like a formal vote at the next board meeting, and then we'll be working with the village and the other groups to decide when this will actually.
Okay.
go into effect.
Okay. The other item of new business are, because of the mild winter we've had. We have unused inclement weather days. We have 6 that we start with, and we're not going to use all 6, so the process of putting them back into the calendar as days off is what's proposed here. Who can summarize? Or?
I can speak quickly to it. Hopefully the memo is straightforward. One, this is a contractual obligation, as it lists up top, the give back of any unused. Some might begin to say in February, as you look at the new calendar, do we keep building in 6? You're going to see 6 there. I mean, the judgment still is to build in 6, even though we're now in a 2-year run of giving back days. We're being modest here and giving back 3 and holding on to 3. And we've tried to pick ones that are of mild impact, meaning around the edges of existing vacations. The Memorial Day would be a 4-day if you would agree to that, as we did this past year. It is extending out the spring vacation. So I think the memo is pretty straightforward. We may need to have an additional set of days brought to you later, but we would do that once we get into April. But every potential snow moment we think we have, I don't want to jinx us, tomorrow's one is drifting away, meaning not snow drifts, but rain, maybe a little midday white stuff. We're in an era right now where it may be snow in the sky, but not snow on the ground, as I'm learning from a certain weather expert. So anyway, it's before you, it's clear, and I'm open for discussion and questions on it. It's not to vote on tonight, but we wanted to give you as a board a heads up, and also the community, and we bring it back, as it says at the bottom here. We may wait as late as February 28th to bring it back. I do say February 7th. The conservative in me says maybe the 28th, because February could suddenly be 3-4 snow days, you don't know. And you could always make it possible, but even if you're signaling now, you know, the community may know. But let me stop and see what kind of questions, comments you have.
I have a question. Other school districts doing that, and if they are, how many days are they getting back to their faculty?
Marina, if you can speak to that.
So, I mean, each school has a different calendar and a different contract. I mean, the idea of unused snow days being added to breaks is not unique to Hastings. I'm not clear on how, I would imagine they do something like this where either they identify it just for planning purposes with people. Many schools, I should say, I don't know everyone's calendar, but each school has a different amount of contractual days that people are required to work. One thing that is the same for everyone is that we're required to have a certain amount of days and a certain amount of instructional hours. And, you know, for the most part, we were on the, I think prior to this change and where we add some days back, we probably were a school that had more days than other schools. I can say that confidently. I mean, how each school, like how many days exactly they have or do not have. But it isn't uncommon that when days are not used, that they're added to extend the break in terms of, you know, each, again, unique to each school, but not uncommon. So.
Yeah, I'm glad we are not voting on it yet, because what I'm trying to see is like how many how many instructional hours is the average across, and then where we fall, and then be able to be fair with, you know, because I know some parents show concern about instructional hours. It's always been something that they've talked about. So I really want to give back, but I'm just trying to figure out.
Well, Dr. Lang, because I'd like to pick up on that as well. And Bill was pretty clear that if it's in our contract, it's going to be a very simple vote. But, you know, I'd like to specifically, you know, bring it to the public's attention. I can tell you in my school district in Yonkers, there is no such thing as give back days. I can tell you on page 2 of our contract with our HTA, it says we will work 182 days. And this is the exact opposite. If we have 6 unused days, we're actually never going to work 182 days. We'd either have 6 closures or we'd have no closures, and then we'll give back all 6. So I would, you know, specifically like to have it be a discussion, even though it might not be something we can vote on. Does Dobbs Ferry give back unused snow days I'd like that to be known. Does Irvington give back unused snow days, and does Ardsley give back unused snow days? There definitely are school districts that do it. I recall a different discussion. I recall we were discussing 1 or 2 give back days. So Bill, I think it precedes you by only a few years. So a discussion I'd like to have when it comes back is this, to my memory, a new MOA to our contract that's less than 5 years old? Have we always been giving back all 6 days? Because I remember it was coming to us as a request that there was something that they wanted, and I don't remember us agreeing to all 6 days. So it would be a point of contention and misinterpretation and misunderstanding. As Dr. Lang was saying, there are many residents who these days don't match up with their work schedule. When their kids go to school, that's when they go to work. And this, it is a misinterpretation amongst many of my colleagues at many districts. Do we have a contract to work 182 days? Are we working extra days on a perfect school year? The school year with no weather, does that imply that our staff and our administrators and our teachers have worked extra days beyond what is in our contract? And I saw your head shaking that maybe it isn't a recent thing, so if there's anything we wanted to talk about now, we could, or when it comes back up. I thought it was only...
What I will do is everything that you're asking for, we can provide.
Yeah, we can
I
dig into all
what
that.
it does, I think we just also want to remember each school is a bit different. And I will say in terms of instructional time, and I'll just respond to that one comment. I know at Hillside, our instructional minutes exceed like what is regionally, because our school day is a bit longer than instructional hours. So if you have to kind of look at, I think we look at, I think when we look at it, we don't want to just, we want to look at days, but we want to also look at instructional hours. We exceed, even with this current model, we're exceeding what the norm or with the requirement. I mean, there's a requirement, there's the, like Jeremy's point, I think you can look at what's required, what are others doing, and where do we sit. I think that's the best way to look at it, and I think we can look at that holistically. I just want to say, like, historically, except for the last few years, typically we did use most of our snow days. So I think, even though it feels like in a year where there's perfect weather, but like the norm is that most of the time this would be the norm. Like, you know,
but historically, did we have give back days?
No, until the modifications to the contract.
Right, it was from a recent MOA, is that correct?
Yeah.
That's right.
My memory of that was that it was 1 year, because we discussed giving back the days last year, and it was a 1-year amendment. I thought to the contract it was just for last year. It was just because of COVID and things that had gone on, and it was something that Valerie put in. It was 1 year. That's why I was just surprised to see this again, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it was like, it was 1 year and it was a potential for like 2 or 3 days. It wasn't all of the days. Am I totally?
No, that's exactly my recollection of the discussion. We never were discussing giving back all 6 days. I understand the contract is, we are always above the minimum. You know, we are always above the minimum, but our calendar has 182 days. We would never penalize our staff by not paying them for snow days. And on snow days, we're very happy to not put anybody at risk and have them driving. We close school, parents make adjustments, but the idea of givebacks was a recent MOA that is in our contract, and I guess we'd have to look to see.
The contract, and it was approved. I mean, it wouldn't exist if it wasn't, you know, put for anyone. I mean, I think there was a lot of discussion.
Was it an amendment that was put in for 1 year, and then when we redid the contract, it slipped in?
No, I mean, I think we can kind of go back, and I can, instead of just, you know, I can show you, it's either just easier so you can kind of see the MOA and then see what it said, and then see, you know, what exactly the terms of that were, because I think, you know, what was approved is what we're operating under right now. And I think that, you know, instead of, we can kind of bring the data to you and kind of look at it and look at the historical. And the way we build a calendar, and on the bottom, just to remember, it does, the way we build a calendar, I believe it's 186 work days.
Yeah, we build 186 in.
182, and that includes like the, you know, the snow days kind of be built. And that's been consistent. The idea is that in years where either the weather wasn't, you we typically would have more days of school, I guess. So, but to Jeremy's point, I mean, people are still working, I guess, in that model. It would still be
Yeah, that's never been a point of confusion. There's 182 school days. We never work more than that. We never work more than the calendar puts out. The question is, do we work less? Well, yes, staff does 186, students do 182. Do we actually have an MOA that differs from the board's recollections that now has that we never will do 182 school days? That it would be never a 182 staff days, that it will always be 176 days, which is very different from what we discussed and what we recall, and it is something that I'd like us to look into.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
I think that's the better way, just anything that you're requesting, we can, just have it, because I think it's easier when you have the information.
all right, and just a small point is that it's Mother Nature that determines the length of the school year, the final say. Right.
This isn't Mother Nature. We're talking about doing it whether or not Mother Nature is involved.
No, my
So
point
I
is
think
that
if
we,
I'm sorry.
No.
If I understand what you're saying, Jeremy, what you're saying is that if there is the agreement of giving back days, then there will be no year that the 182 will ever be done.
Right.
That's
Which is
what he's saying. So then why don't we just make it?
which is a very recent thing.
Okay. So I get what you're saying.
my point to that point was that, this year's unusual so far, but it's quite rare for us to have more than a day that we haven't used. There's been a couple, I've been here 16, 17 years. We've always ended up using almost all of them. So, I just think we're judging from a very small window. But we're not going to vote on this till the 28th. So we have the meeting on the 7th that we could come back with and have a look at this.
Yes, on the 7th, we can bring back, and ahead of that, make sure the MOA is before you. We can explain the evolution of the MOA, where it is now. We can do some comparison with the other districts as far as, how they're handling it. And, can do the count relative to the total and the calendar and used, and just bring you that analysis. So you have that on the 7th. I hear Alex suggesting you wouldn't want to vote anyway to the 28th, which is probably smart, because we may hit some significant weather in February, and historically March is one of your snowiest months in this part of the country anyway. We'll see. So,
Okay, yeah, I
but
think
these are all very good questions, and questions anticipated to a certain extent, so I appreciate it.
And if there's a way of figuring out, maybe you mentioned this, Bill, but how many days typically we use? Like, was last year or this year?
we have it.
Yeah, so if we could, if you could bring that as well, maybe for the last decade, how many days? we use.
That's kind of what we were.
Yeah,
kind of
that's what-
looking at, I
that's
think,
what-
historically.
Great, thanks.
That's what Maureen was saying.
Thank you.
Just one question on like late starts or early dismissal. Does that factor in where you would add
No.
like 4 late starts and it would equate to a day?
No.
No, so it doesn't
No.
get counted at all in the instructional either
No.
against it? Okay.
No.
No, the state gives us certain requirements of the number of days, not like 900, 990. There are certain.
For hours, not
Oh, you
days.
mean if you have a late start?
Yeah, so if we don't, so one of the reasons that we had our late start shift a few years back, I had just started and that shifted, is we still, regardless of what's being discussed, there's hours that are required during the school year. There are a number of days. And to Maureen's earlier point, we're actually much over that at Hillside and much closer to that at middle and high school.
Oh,
So we
that's
have to
good.
keep an eye on that all the time, no matter what we're doing, because that's a state reg that supersedes that. So, but maybe to Maureen's question a little bit, so say we had.
Like a delayed opening.
Yeah, say we had
Delayed,
4
right.
delayed openings, so we open at 10 instead of at, whatever, 8:15, we open at 10:15. But these aren't snow days, they're delayed openings. So in total, we lost 8 hours of school. But that doesn't count, we'd still have to give back.
There's no relation. There's no relation between, there's a minimum hours number, which we almost always are above.
State.
But there's no relationship between 1 hour delay, 2 hour delays, and this part of our MOA. They're very distinct and unrelated.
Days
As
are-
long as we don't go below 990, which is not likely.
You are allowed to have, but at the state level, so in terms of the instructional they don't reduce that, I guess, like, you're allowed to have some
Yeah,
flexibility.
they credit you in essence, the
It's
state
a
credits
safety
you.
issue, they don't want districts like pushing it, you know, I know.
The state also allows certain types of activities on a superintendent's conference days to be counted towards the mandate. So, so when the professional learning committee designs superintendent's conference day, for example, I'm just giving a wild example here, so hanging a bulletin board wouldn't count, but having professional learning as a team to design for student instruction would count. So when we talk about like team collaboration time versus set up my classroom, and we build that in also when thinking about state requirements to make sure that we're compliant.
I have one last question. So what is the minimum state required number of hours?
990.
Are they for instructional hours? Or?
900 or 990 depending on the grade, and it's 180 days in total that are mandated, and that is inclusive of superintendent's conference days, so it may not mean student contact instruction, but there are regs around what's allowable. Yeah, so they
Do they have
keep
one?
an eye on it, and not only do we keep an eye on it, we have to report it. We have to, like, each of the buildings reports exactly what they've done. So even if, for example, we had an odd situation where a building has to close but the other buildings were open, there are spreadsheets that we have to do every single year to make sure that we're meeting the regs. And part of the discussion, that 1 year when the late starts went away on a regular basis, that was part of the discussion. We couldn't make our hours.
So my specific ask is, do they have instructional hours? The states have they without a superintendent day? Do they have that require?
It.
Yeah.
It's public.
No, you're asking like if we were, well, that's
The
part of
minimum.
everybody's calculation, those 4 days that every school uses or allowed superintendent's conference days, those are part of the calculation.
Calculation of the
And
one.
actually,
Okay, got it.
I mean, quite frankly, I mean, we can kind of, maybe the next step would just be helpful to do this as part of showing the hours, and we can just show you like what the calendar looks like. And then as an example, on days in which, like your testing or regions, even if students are in school, you do count those hours. So we can kind of, there's some that are like, and then there, but every school's in that, right? Like
Right.
every high school, students aren't in, but they're getting those instructional hours. So we can kind of see what the real, like how it's calculated, what's allowable, what's not allowable, where we are in comparison to others in the region, I think.
And so a region is considered instructional hours, even though the kids aren't being instructed?
Certain things are allowable based on what the state says.
That's how
allowable.
everyone
Yeah,
We keep our eye on like making sure that the required activities.
Yeah, that's, state regs.
But to Bill's earlier
Yeah.
point too, I remember when I was in Ardsley, as a principal there, at the time, Ardsley didn't have any snow days built into the calendar. They built their calendar, and if it snowed, the days were deducted. So each district handles it a little bit differently based on their CBA, based on how the district designs the calendar. So it does differ from different places. So we may build in more days than another place, but they may not build in any snow days, so everybody handles it a
Yeah,
little
we
bit
definitely build in more, I know that, because we typically
Yeah,
don't have the issue.
I think the best thing we do right now is bring you the data.
Great.
And have a database discussion, because I think what you'll see, if we can look at the averages per year, because this request came out of some place in the sense of what's the average run rate and all the rest. We'll bring you that back, so on the 7th, and we're gonna talk about that meeting in a second, what's on that list for you. We can dig into this more, and then I think, again, sensible to vote on this on the 28th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to second public comment. Anybody? No? All right, we're gonna move on to agenda review, and we can click into the February 7th meeting.
So I think, I'll just hold the mic if you don't mind. We've done, I think, a pretty good job of spreading out demanding evenings for you. The 7th building is a pretty big evening, because you've got your detailed budget presentation. We now will have to add in, which is good, coming back to this, you might want to wait till the 28th, but I think you need more time to think about this give back issue. You also have in there the State of the District mid-year update. I did talk to Alex a little bit yesterday about this, which is my view is keep this on the agenda for you, And it may just be a written report at that point. And I would be queued up to summarize it for you, but after I know how much time you've already spent here. And if it's simply just hitting 4 or 5 sentences, or just say, please read it, and we can talk about it at a later date. Because I'm reluctant to take that off the calendar for you, but just at least have it, there's a written report. But right now, then, and I don't think, we haven't added here yet, I apologize, to the 7th, you'd be voting on, you'd have your first review of the new calendar. I guess we didn't get that in there, right, Melissa D? Am I missing it in my version?
No, but
No,
that's
it's
right.
still on the old, I see it.
Yeah, we have to move it up. So your meeting on the 7th, your big items will be major budget presentation 1. Hopefully tonight helped you a little bit on that with the headline version that Maureen gave you. First discussion of next year's recommended calendar, and then a state of the district mid-year, and also then coming back to this give back issue. So where you've typically had 1 or 2 major items, you've got 3 or 4, and one alone typically would be the budget. So let me just stop and let you chew on that one for a bit.
Do we wanna, maybe since we're moving on the 14th, the school calendar review, you know, we're moving that up, should we move the mid-year review, mid-year update to the 14th?
14th of,
So am I looking at the right calendar?
Where are you looking at?
Right, that's what I mean,
February 7th.
I meant March. So,
Oh,
yeah,
March.
so on March, in March 14th, on the calendar, on March 14th, we're supposed to be discussing the school year calendar review, but that's going away.
No, it's
because
all
we're
moving up
discussing
one
it
month.
On the 7th, right, so I'm suggesting swapping. So move the state of the district mid-year update to March 14th, and swap those 2 items. Am I
You
being
mean
clear?
move the budget? I thought, okay.
no,
Keep the budget, just move the,
Oh,
swapping
mid-year,
the
got it.
calendar discussion with the state of the district mid-year update.
Got it, got
So
it.
we don't have to have 4 big things on the 14th, we move the,
You mean the 7th?
the 7th, thank you.
yeah, we have a meeting on the 28th.
Nothing on the 20th.
No, I'm suggesting, sorry, I'm suggesting we swap the calendar with the mid-year update.
Yeah, and I probably, we didn't, so the 7th should have your first read of the calendar, and the 28th would be
Yeah.
your vote on the calendar.
Right.
That may, typically that takes some time.
Yeah,
So that's a beefy item for you in the budget. So what you're recommending is at least move the mid-year update out of the 7th to either the 28th or to March 14th.
well, I was suggesting the 14th, because right now the
Of
school year
March, I just-
the 14th of March.
Yeah.
Because right now it has the school year calendar review.
I see, that space
And
opens
so that
up.
will be opened up, so just swap it.
But that is, the 28th is, we are gonna vote on the calendar. We
Yeah,
are
so
not
the-
really gonna discuss that much, because we will discuss that on the 7th, correct?
Right, so the 14th has this free line.
But we have the budget,
Well, we can
okay,
decide.
I understand, okay, I got it.
I'm just saying, because now we have 4 big things to discuss on the 7th.
I mean,
It's a mid-year
yeah,
update,
if
it's
the-
important,
So
but
that's
not
my
urgent.
question.
if the board agrees with Doreen, it would be helpful to know, because that helps our planning, because the 7th is your next meeting,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I would say as long as there's nothing timely in there that you think it has to be on the 7th, if it's the same report, if it happens on the 14th, I think that would be fine.
Yeah, and just let me check in with Maureen. We have the
Is it better
proposed
for you, Maureen?
instructional budget on the 14th, as opposed to the 28th, right? You wanna keep that there, right? Is that, I was double checking, that's, okay. And then, yeah, I mean, the update, I mean, we could move it to the 28th if you want, because you don't have a budget discussion of, I mean, you may want to have a little discussion, but you're not having a big budget presentation. You've got a significant budget presentation on the 7th and the 14th.
So maybe the 28th then does make it,
Yeah,
is there
that's what I
something
was
else
saying,
teed
the
up there?
28th makes sense, not the 14th.
Yeah, shift the State of the District mid-year update to the 28th, and hopefully your calendar is.
28th of February.
Yes, sorry, thank you. So, the 7th would be the budget presentation, your first read on the calendar, and those would be your 2 big items, right?
Yeah.
On the 28th, you would have your second read of the calendar, which hopefully will be a pretty clean discussion, because you've dealt with it on the 7th at length, and we will bring back to you on the 28th, the State of the District on the 28th, right?
Yeah.
So that's it's still a busy several next meetings for you, but it spreads out a wee bit better. Is that, and Melissa, do you got all that? Okay.
Okay, sounds prudent. Thank you, Doreen.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Doreen.
Moving on to Board of Education comments.
I have a comment.
What are it?
I went to the 5th and 6th grade concert. I told Alex and Bill about this last week. I don't know if anybody else was there, but it was incredible, right? There was like, it was packed. There were so many people there. It's the biggest band the 5th grade has ever had. I think half of the 5th grade is in band this year, which is incredible. And I just want to say thank you so much to the 4 gentlemen who lead the music department in the middle school. It was so fantastic. I mean, those kids they're talented, but they clearly love those teachers so much. I mean, it's so sweet. It's so wonderful to see, and it was a really amazing event. So just kudos to Mr. Riss, Mr. Freeney, Mr. Rubino, and Mr. Day. Right? Am I forgetting him? So thank you so much. It was amazing, and I have to give a little plug since I have a 6th grader to Honk, which is playing next Friday and Saturday night. Not this Friday and Saturday, but next Friday and Saturday. And again, very dedicated. Lori was sick a little bit, so the kids have been working hard, and she has too. And I'm very excited for that.
That's it. That's the Ugly Duckling musical,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
My son is playing ugly.
Ah.
Shout out to March in Hillside, I don't know the date, Lion King.
Ah,
Lion King.
My son-
wow,
my
that's
son is
ambitious.
singing.
Excellent. Okay, perfect.
That's ambitious.
So add your
Yeah.
voice to the
Right, exactly.
Yep, thank you. Any other Board of Education comments?
I would add the 1X were excellent. I think that made but that was really good. Your son got a lot of shout outs. And on a more somber note, sympathy to Miss Laura Rich, who lost her husband. I know we saw some, but of course, sympathies go out to her. I saw the services this week, right?
Yes.
Sorry. So sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's okay.
March 9th and 10th, Lion King, and my son is also playing in Lion King. He's a monkey.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
That's all he wanted to do. To hold it.
Any other final comments? No? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, that's